Now let me make this abundantly clear. This is only my personal feelings about the rankings within the Metroid series, and I'll do my best to explain my reasoning behind it, but like almost anyone else, I'm sure my bias plays a part. I definitely have a couple unpopular opinions on this list, but again, it's just based on my honest experience. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments section below. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 14, Metroid Other M. Sure, there are a couple games within the Metroid franchise that just aren't that good, but there's only one game that actually did a significant amount of damage to the franchise itself, and that is Metroid Other M. Although I absolutely love Team Ninja's work on the Ninja Gaiden games, they were without question the wrong choice to handle this Metroid project. The different camera angles and the greater emphasis on combat almost completely negated what has historically made Metroid games so special, its sense of exploration. With its sensationalized drama and its cringy dialogue, they even managed to make Samus unlikable, which is the worst thing you could possibly do with a Metroid game. At this point, it's such a black eye on the franchise's legacy that most Metroid games since have either tried to fix what Other M got wrong, or they've just ignored Other M altogether. Number 13, Metroid Prime Pinball. This one will be brief. To be honest, this game is a decent amount of fun and executes what it was trying to be extremely well. But let's be real here, we're talking about the critically acclaimed Metroid franchise, and there's only so much something as simple as a pinball game can do in order to climb up a list like this. I will say this though, I would rather play 10 straight hours of Metroid Prime Pinball than just 1 hour of Metroid Other M. Number 12, Metroid Prime Federation Force. This game wasn't as bad as a lot of people claim, but it was certainly far from what traditional Metroid fans were hoping for. Samus is mostly absent from the game as you play as Marines from the Galactic Federation, and there's definitely a greater focus on story. The combat was a little too simple and was borderline boring in many instances, but admittedly, the experience does become significantly better if you're playing cooperatively with friends. At times, the graphics and presentation definitely felt a bit too childish for what was typically a much more mature franchise with a much more sinister tone. Number 11, Metroid 2 Return of Samus. Back in the early 90s, this Game Boy title was a massive step for the handheld universe. It had the usual fun gameplay and did a decent job of building upon the story of the original. With its extremely dated graphics, and with a lack of a map in an open world, it certainly feels a bit rough to go back and play in the modern day of gaming. Number 10, Metroid Prime Hunters. This was a fun adaptation of the Prime's 3D experience into the handheld universe, and displayed some of the best graphics of the Nintendo DS's lineup. It definitely didn't feature as much exploration as the Metroid Prime trilogy, but the combat was engaging and exciting. The multiplayer was definitely the best aspect of this title, which isn't a common claim of games within the Metroid franchise. Although it's a quality game on a personal level, it definitely requires friends to play with in order to get the most out of this title. Number 9, Metroid. Not only is it the first game within the franchise, but it's also the first Metroid game I ever played, and I still go back and replay it quite often to this very day. Sure, there's quite a few aspects of it that have some tough replay value, like how you have no map for reference, you always start the game with 30 health regardless of where you left off, and there's no save stations, only long, gigantic passwords. With that being said, a platforming open-world environment was a completely new concept, and one that the original Metroid executed with flying colors. Even the plain black background worked very well with the creepy 8-bit music, and did such a good job of creating that unique feeling of isolation that's become such a staple element of the Metroid franchise. Many of the most iconic musical themes and enemies all began here on this tremendous classic, and the rest was history. Number 8, Metroid Samus Returns. This was a remake of the Game Boy game from the early 90s, and it was Mercury Steam's debut as developers of Metroid games. It was a quality remake with smooth controls, which was just a glimpse of what they would later bring us with Metroid Dread. One of the common complaints, and yes, it annoyed me too, was the overused melee counter mechanic, which really made the overall combat start to feel a bit repetitive, which was later perfected by Mercury Steam in Metroid Dread. Up to this point, Samus Returns probably had the most aesthetically pleasing visuals that we had ever seen in a 2D Metroid game, as there was tons of depth and details within the background atmospheres. It's not among the best of the very best, but it's still a solid Metroid game for sure. Number 7. Metroid Fusion. This is one of my hot takes of this list, that I simply don't love this game as much as most people seem to. Don't get me wrong, it had one of the most intriguing storylines of any Metroid game to date, and the atmosphere and tone is incredible for a handheld game, with the sense of dread and anxiety amped up with the use of the formidable SAX. I also appreciated how this game was tremendously challenging with the boss fights, which made the eventual accomplishment all the more rewarding. My biggest issue with the game is a massive one, and it keeps me from ranking the game as high as other fans do. There is almost no explorative moments in this game, and it may actually be the most linear Metroid game to date, which really nullifies a lot of what makes Metroid games so special. Adam is constantly telling you which specific room to go to throughout the entirety of the game, which to me felt like I was stuck in a perpetual tutorial. Maybe my opinion would be different if this was the first Metroid game that I had ever played, but since I had played all the Metroid games up to this point, the explorative nature of the series was something that I was strongly missing throughout. Number 6. Metroid Zero Mission. What a wonderful remake this game was. Not only did it expand upon the beauty and story of the original Metroid, but the soundtrack was enhanced as well, with some of the most adventurous tracks of any Metroid game. As a huge fan of the original, I had a giant smile on my face as I played through this one. Although I do think it's the best handheld Metroid game, if I had one major complaint, it's that the game was simply too short, and I was pretty surprised how quickly I put both Ridley and Kraid in my rearview mirror. The playable stealth section as Zero Suit Samus was a nice touch as well, although it did seem to be a bit off on the timing, considering how climactic the final battle with Mother Brain felt. Number 5. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It's my least favorite of the trilogy, but that's not saying much considering the quality of the 3 games as a whole. Although Prime 2 featured much of the same amazing mechanics and gameplay as the first game, one of the areas I feel like it may have suffered just a bit in comparison was its atmosphere. The constant shifting between the light and dark world was a fun and interesting new take on the series, but by the end of the game I had grown pretty weary of the dark world, as much of the atmosphere began to feel pretty repetitive and stale at that point, which is something that the first game definitely never struggled with. These could be seen as small nitpicks, but when you're narrowing it down to the best of the best Metroid games, you have to start splitting hairs just a bit. Number 4. Metroid Dread. It's still pretty early for me to feel confident about where I rank Metroid Dread, but as of now, this is where it stands. I absolutely love this game, and with its gorgeous graphics and with its incredibly smooth gameplay, Samus has never looked any better. Ravenbeak was also a well-developed and extremely intimidating villain, that if anything, I'm sad isn't going to be a reappearing character within the franchise. Dread also did a remarkable job of re-establishing Samus as the cool and collected bounty hunter that we all know and love, while also adding some thrilling twists and turns to her personal story. I don't have many complaints with this game, but one of the few is its somewhat lacking soundtrack in comparison to the other more memorable scores of the previous Metroid games. Number 3. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I think most people don't appreciate this masterpiece enough. It's so very close to being my favorite Metroid game of all time. Not only did the Wii Remote work seamlessly well within the Prime universe, but this game also had the most incredible visuals of any Metroid game to date, at least in my very strong opinion. It's also the perfect example of what the Metroid franchise should be moving forward. A story-driven adventure with new and intriguing characters and with gameplay development that wasn't concerned about taking risks. The scale and emotion of this third installment made it feel like the most epic Metroid experience that I had ever had. For example, the game gave us just enough time to build an attachment to Samus's friends and fellow bounty hunters, so when Samus later has to kill her corrupted friends one by one, all while fighting off her own corruption, the emotion is off the charts. And by the time you finally reach Dark Samus, you are so ready to kill this evil bitch. It definitely shook up the formula of traditional Metroid games, but in my opinion, it did it the right way by enhancing the story, taking risks, and increasing the cast of important characters. Number 2. Super Metroid. For many people, this is still the greatest Metroid game of all time, and for an even smaller demographic, it's the greatest video game of all time. For me, it's second on the list of Metroid games as it's the ultimate example of what Metroid was meant to be in a 2D universe. It's well-paced, challenging, atmospheric, and contains several surprises that are nearly impossible to forget. The developers took full advantage of all of the Super Nintendo's capabilities, with its awesome soundtrack, grand and epic boss fights, and a plethora of unique abilities that have been mainstays of Samus's arsenal ever since. Whether or not this game takes your number 1 spot probably just depends on whether you favor the 2D or the 3D Metroid experience, which brings us to my number 1 spot. Number 1. Metroid Prime. Going through Metroid Prime for the first time was probably the most immersive video game experience that I've ever had. The pace, the atmosphere, the music, and the sound design all do such a wonderful job of making you feel like you're in that suit as Samus. It left such a strong impression on me that I can't even be in a green atmosphere with rainy conditions and not imagine Talon Overworld's theme playing in the background. When this game released, Nintendo labeled it as a first-person adventure, making it a unique genre of its own, and that description couldn't have been any more fitting. It had the perfect blend of combat, exploration, puzzle solving, discovery, and mystery. Almost every type of atmosphere you would hope to be in a game like this is beautifully represented in Metroid Prime. From the lonely and chilling space frigate, to the calming and soothing Talon Overworld, to the ruins of the Chozo filled with history and lore just waiting to be unpacked. Not to mention other iconic locations like the Magmore Caverns, Phendrana Drifts, and the eerie Phazon Mines. Somehow, Retro Studios took the 2D experience and made it 3D, while making it feel like it was the same Metroid universe we had always known.
Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Metroid and Zelda content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.